Okay, now today we're going to be picking up in Acts chapter 8. So if you have a set of notes on that, please go there with me. Acts chapter 8, verses 25 through 40. We're picking up in the section on the ministry of Philip, is where we are today, on the ministry of Philip. And remember in Acts chapter 7, 8, and 9, we were covering the lives of three people. We were covering first the life of Stephen, remember? And we talked about Stephen, his ministry in Acts 6. We talked about his message in Acts 7 and his martyrdom at the end of Acts 7. And we looked at those three things. And the ministry of Stephen was very short-lived, very short. And now we're transitioning into the ministry of Philip, which is where we are in Acts 8. And then next week we'll pick up and we will start looking at Acts chapter 9. And we're going to look at the conversion of Saul. And then the rest of the book of Acts deals with Saul, who later becomes known to us as the Apostle Paul. And he has really the longest ministry of all. But Philip, according to one passage that we'll see here in Acts, has a ministry that goes on for at least 20 years. And so we're getting just a snapshot here in Acts chapter 8 of the ministry of Philip. And by the way, it's always the Lord that determines the duration of a person's ministry. Because we don't know when the Lord is going to take a person home. We don't know when the Lord is going to remove a person from this earth and call that person home to heaven. The only thing we can do is be faithful to the ministry to which the Lord calls us. I think of people in the Old Testament. I think of in Jeremiah 25, verse 3, where Jeremiah gives a message to the leaders of Israel. And he says, you know, I preached to you for these 23 years, but you would not listen. And Jeremiah was faithful to deliver the word of God in accuracy, in absolute truth to the leadership of Israel. But they were a recalcitrant audience. They were hard-hearted. They would not listen to his message. To his words that he delivered to them faithfully for 23 years. And yet Jeremiah was absolutely a smashing success as a minister. Not because he had great results. Let's never confuse results with success. He was a success because he was faithful to the thing to which the Lord called him. He was faithful to the Lord's ministry. He was faithful to preach the word that the Lord called him to preach. The results were beyond his control. He could not control people's responses. Noah, according to, I think it's 2 Peter 2, Peter refers to Noah as a preacher of righteousness. And when we understand Noah, for example, during the 120 years that he was building the ark, he wasn't just building the ark, he was serving as a preacher of righteousness, Peter tells us. And so during this time, he was preaching to the people. He was warning them of judgment to come. He was telling them about the ark. And by the way, once Noah got all the animals onto the ark, once he got it loaded with everything, guess what? There was still lots of room on the ark. There was ample capacity for extra people to get onto the ark. But how many people got onto the ark? Noah, his wife, 3 sons and 3 daughters. There were 8 people that got onto the ark. Plus all the animals that got on it. And yet Noah was a preacher of righteousness for 120 years. So he had 0 converts during that time. Was Noah a success? Yes, absolutely he was a success because he was faithful to the thing to which the Lord called him. And so we have to be careful how we define success biblically. And too often when you look at today, even when I went through seminary, what they would often call success, they would often look at these big mega churches, and they would often quantify success in the size of the building, or in the number of people, or in the how big a fund they had in the bank account. And those may be measures of success in a worldly sense, but biblically those things would never bear out. You could never put that over the lives of men like Noah, or the lives of Jeremiah, or even over the life of someone like the Apostle Paul or Stephen, and say that these men were a success, because according to that standard they weren't. They simply were not. And so we have to be careful how we define success. And I don't want to digress and preach a completely different message, but just simply to point out that there were sometimes positive responses, but even in the life of Christ, he got a lot of negative responses, didn't he? I mean, there were a lot of people that responded positively to him, but he got a lot of negative response too, and ultimately was rejected by the nation of Israel as a whole and by its leadership.